Hello, welcome. We just want to welcome you guys to the strength training program. Firstly, some introductions of the reasons why we do gym. There's a misconception and many misconceptions out there about the reason for gymming, especially for scholars and school people. The big concern is obviously not what you do, but how you do what you do, and very important, the reasons behind it. And that's why we set up this DVD to teach people the reason why to gym, and that you can start from ages as young as ages 9 up until 18 and obviously older when you become a professional rugby player or professional sportsman. It's really just important to know that you have to work in conjunction with a sports specialist or a biokineticist or a sports scientist or someone that knows something about strength training and knows reasons why, not always reasons how. It's really important to know that what we're going to do in this first phase of our programming is to teach you the fundamentals. It's like literally like building a house. When you build a house, you start with throwing the foundations, then you'll put up the walls, and then you'll put up the roof. And sometimes we see guys gymming and we want to mimic what they do, but we don't always understand the reasons why. So our first phase program that we're going to take you through is a basic program that will teach you the foundation work to take you to the next level, that is building the walls and building the roof. So the first part of the stuff we're going to do is we're going to teach you how to use your body as a functional movement and as one structure, and obviously teach you how to build strength onto those foundations. You don't need to use a barbell or a dumbbell. You can even use a broomstick in all the overhead movements, and you can do exactly the same exercise. Again, it's not about how heavy the weight is, it's about the tension in the body and the movement of the body through the whole range of motion. And kind of just show you that. Thank you, Carl.
So this is just to demonstrate other forms of equipment that you can use outside of either barbell, a stick, a broomstick, whatever it is. Just your different types of elastics that you can use, and they can also be beneficial. Just taking out, locking out above the head, driving up with the shoulders to create that tension, and then down you go.
Okay, this exercise we're going to show you is called a Turkish get-up. Part of that first phase program. The first important point is obviously the same hand in the air, the same knee is bent. Okay? Very important is when you lift a weight in the air, it's very important, the weight is kept almost like punching someone, so the wrist is always straight and the fist is always clenched. Secondly, when you do push up, the tension is probably going to be on that hand, so its key point is to make sure that the lat is always firing and the lat's always contracted. So the first movement is out of this position, is push up onto that elbow. Out of that movement, you push onto that hand. Then you lift your hips up and take that leg and push it through underneath your body. Try and stabilize, keep the lats both focused. And out of this position, you lunge forward into an overhead lunge position. And you follow exactly the same way back. You step back into a lunge. You rest into that hand, you push your hips up and your leg through, you sit down on the floor, you lie down at that elbow, and you lie down on the back. And you repeat this on the right hand side and on the left hand side as part of the warm-up.
Probably the biggest mistake early on is just a question of weight. So, you know, with Carl, we didn't use a very heavy weight, and that's probably best to start off with, is just using something a bit lighter, even if you do think that it is too light, but just to get the whole technique and the movement of that exercise, so that there's a coordination within the system in terms of getting that exercise completed, rather than trying to work through much heavier weight and the exercise in itself is not correctly performed.
Okay, the next exercise we just want to show, and probably most coaches know this one, is called a clap push-up. The reason we want to show the difference is Carl started maybe at the top, out of the push-up position. The key parts again is like that plank we did in the beginning, is to create tension on the body, tighten the glutes, tighten the quads. But what we want is, through a clap push-up motion, is to teach the body in unison to move. So I'm going to let Carl just do one of the clap exercises. So he goes down and quickly up in the air. He touches hands and he starts at the top again. So it's just very simple to teach them that the body is always working in unison, especially in most sports, or actually in all sports. And a normal clap push-up, you can make different variations. You can either do the one on the knees like he's doing now, or you can do a normal one like we normally do with just the upper body moving up and down. Maybe just a different variation is one that maybe girls can use. They normally can't do a push-up, but they'll have the ability to actually do a clap push-up on their knees. Same movement, keep the glutes tight, keep the quads contracted, focus on the lats, good body posture, and out of that position you just do a clap push-up.
Same applies actually with all squats. So again, the feet are going to be hip width apart, right? Toes slightly out. All right, so that's the sort of the pillar that you're going to adopt the strength there. Just turn around and just show it from the front there, Carl. So feet hip width apart, the toes slightly out. So that's your strongest position that you're going to be looking for in the squat. And you see most people when they're playing golf or tennis or cricket, feet are hip width apart. Okay, so let's come side on again. Right, hip width apart, toes slightly out. And what you want to do with the body weight squats, it's not really that important where you choose to put your arms or your hands, but you want to create tension within this area here. So we're really looking at the three key joints here, being the hip, the knee, and the ankle. So we're wanting to develop a lot of tension here. So the glutes need to fire up, try and get that to run through the glutes into the hamstring, the quads to fire through there. And then slowly you're going to go down so that you've got good flexion within that hip there. Just hold it there, Carl. Right, so what we've got is great flexion within the hip here. You see a good angle, a joint angle within the hip and the knee, and then again into the ankle. So come up slightly. One of the mistakes that we will tend to see is that, just stand up, sorry, okay, is to have flexion in the ankle and the knee, and the person forgets to have flexion in the hip. So just try and, like, as if almost now you're going to be sitting without, and that tends to happen is there's a lack of balance, or what happens is that the person, because they don't have flexion in the hip, they tend to come right up onto their toes, and the heels start to lift the ground. Perfect. Okay, so if you can hold it there, you see that there's almost no flexion within the hip. All right, so if this exercise was performed with any weight, you'd probably see a lot of stress occurring into the spine. There is some flexion in the knee and the ankle, but it's not enough, so the person's having to lift his heels right off the ground to try and compensate for that movement. Okay, just variations of the squat position with the elastic band, and exactly the same applies. So Carl will come in and have flexion of the hip, knee, and ankle. Off you go, and creating the tension on the way up against the band. And that's just another variation that you can do with the squat with an elastic band.
This next exercise is called the cycle setup. The reason we put it in, and you'll see on the phase one of the programs, we have an upper body with some core and lower body with some core movements. So the cycle setup is one of the ones that we use as part of that core exercises. And very simply, it's just to teach the body actually to move in unison again. So it's very important is keep the hands not behind the head. Somebody keep the hands behind his ear. And the very simple movement is to try and let this elbow touch this knee in unison while it moves. So you can just show you one short one. Lift the leg up so you can either leave it on the floor or in the air. And then this elbow just touches that side and goes back, and then the opposite. So literally in a running motion, you'll always have the left arm and the right leg will work together, and obviously in unison on the other side. And that synergy is quite important in movement, in most movement patterns. So if you can just show it quickly how it looks a little bit quicker. And that's called a cycle setup.
We're going to go into a single leg Romanian. What I want to show you before is just the double leg. One of the most important things with the Romanian deadlift or any deadlift is the movement that needs to happen is actually, particularly in the stiff leg that comes in, so it's going to be a stiff leg, the movement that comes in is actually has to come in around the pelvis. So there's got to be an anterior tilt of the pelvis and not any flexion of the actual spine. So just go into an anterior tilt, so that's great. So the hammies are on stretch, okay, because there's no flexion in the knee, that's remained locked, right? So all that's happened is that the pelvis is tilted and the spine in itself has actually maintained its normal curvature. the first thing to pick up on if there's work out of the spine is this kind of hollow rounding here, right, and the rounding that's coming into the back now. All right, so that's going to put a lot of pressure onto the spine itself. Right, so from this here we're going into the single leg. All right, so when you get your balance, okay, so the movement's going to come. Good movement there. All right, glutes are firing. All right, there's good activation of the back muscles. The spine's in its normal curvature, and the balance in itself is good. Abs need to lock up in the abs need to come in here and work as well. Okay, that's important. And then up she comes. Okay, and just do the other leg there. We'll just go into the other leg. Right, so lock in here. So this side's going to be doing the work, so we can see straight away Carl's locked into the glutes here. The rectus spinae here will come in and start firing, as will the abdominals there. Okay, good.
Just want to get a principle across in the beginning. When we do work with boys with push-up positions, it's really important to know that most sports activities doesn't really have a pushing movement in it. It normally has to do with a pulling movement of the back muscles. So sometimes we give the push-up as a push movement. This is actually where we want to teach them to pull. Very simply, it's almost like you're saying, if you want to open a can or something, you won't try and open a can far away from your body. You'll try and do it as close as possible to activate as much muscles as possible. So when we do a push-up and then down in that push-up position, it's really important when his arm is extended, you actually want retraction of the scapula, so the scapula goes back. He tries to keep his elbow as close as possible, and it's an inward rotation of the shoulder and the back of the muscle. And then he obviously just pushes himself against gravity to move up. So the downward movement is just as important as the up movement, because the shoulder and the lats need to tense. So key point you can look at always, is the lat contracting or is the chest contracting? And obviously in our movie we want the lats to move. So the next exercise I'm going to show on the floor is just a normal bodyweight push-up. Very important again is that plank position we spoke at the beginning. So you'll go into a plank, make sure the glutes are contracted. The key point, like I said, head's always in line. So we want some retraction of the scapula. So the shoulder moves back and then he forces himself down to the floor. It doesn't drop down. And he pushes with his lats, he pushes himself off. So make sure that the lats always contracted, make sure the body is good in line, the glutes always firing, and that's called a bodyweight push-up. So you don't need a lot of weight actually to do that, you just need the tension of the body. Okay, just to emphasize again, the plank from the side on. If Carl goes into a proper plank, the pointers that stuff you need to look at firstly is the head. Drop the bums a little bit, contract the glutes, tighten the quads, make sure the lats also contracted, and the head will normally try and lift up, so it always stays in neutral position. A test you can do is either to press him at the back or to try and move his head. Okay, and that gives a good indication.
Okay, so it's quite nice and evident. You can see the glutes are firing, so relax them now, Carl, and then they're relaxed and firing again. Okay, so what's nice with this exercise, compound exercise, you've got a lot of different muscles that are working all together at the same time.
The next exercise is called a side plank. Really important when you start. The whole idea is to train stability in the hips. So what you're going to do is out of this position, he's going to lift up his hips. Try and tell him to try and keep focus and keep the lats contracted. Focus on the glutes being contracted, the quads being strong, and the toes always trying to face forward. Different variations you can do is then try and let them stand there for 30 seconds or 20 seconds or however long. Or you can ask them to lift a hand, or you can ask them just to lift a foot. And that will just increase intensity of that movement. Okay, thank you. Next one is just called a side plank. Just make sure that the hips are nice and parallel and try and hold it. Next one is called a side plank. Keep the body in the same position, and abduction and adduction. Hips, abduction, adduction, side plank. Keep parallel